This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back. So, we're going to deal with a couple of things right out of the bat, and in a few minutes I'm going to ask for you guys to call in because it looks like we might start dropping bombs on parts of Syria.
Mm-hmm. And we actually have Kerry on the phones today, so
oh great,
poor Dennis
okay.
Won't have to run around like a
right.
one-legged man in a butt kicking contest.
Right, busy as a fiddler's elbow. They, you know, and be nice to Kerry, by the way, because these are going to be impassioned conversations. I have no doubt. So
Kerry does not care what you think.
No, she doesn't. She's just passing it on.
Yeah, you're not on a show with her,
right? So let's start with Ferguson. There seems to be there's a fantastic blind spot that is just gorgeous to watch in the part of what are specifically your aging baby boomer males, white baby boomer males tend to be from a, you know, from what, you know, this is anecdotal evidence on my part. This is not as statistically sound as what I was saying before we started this whole thing. Is that there's this, okay, there was a guy being interviewed about what's going on in Ferguson and how it's going down. This guy Steve Hukin, and by the way, his way he makes income is he rents 20 low-income housing properties. Okay, this is how he makes his living.
He lives at them all at once, or he's
no, he rents them out. Yeah, he gets them from the government.
It's a weird way to make money.
He's created a loophole, right? He's created a loophole in government, like where he actually gets. Yeah, he gets funded for being funded. No, he rents out 20 properties as low-income housing. Okay, and he blames the government for dumping poor people in the city. He goes, this is his quote, "You end up renting to the least worst," he said. "Obama has destroyed the economy. The jobs are gone. The American dream is gone." Thank God there's no hyperbole. These people have no hope, and he put them here.
Yep. Remember that? That was like the second or third thing he did when he got in office.
Was start Ferguson, Missouri.
Yeah, and he put all the poor black people in just a few places.
Right. Yeah. It was.
I think it was a great idea at first.
That was the Obama doctrine, wasn't it? That was what he was. It was right out of the gate. This is my new plan. This is my new plan for creating.
Take all the people.
We're going to take all the black people and put them in one neighborhood because that hasn't been tried before. So Hukin.
Good luck, landlords. Finding the least worst.
Check this out. And this should be, by the way, understand who we're quoting. Steve Hukin. This guy probably couldn't wait to be interviewed, by the way. He probably elbowed people to get to the front of the line when a news crew was around. Obama has destroyed the economy. That's, yes, what was the stock market at 16,000, whatever?
Yahtzee level.
But if you look at also the band of poverty that exists in this country, and he's absolutely right that there's a crap part of the economy, it's all in the southern states. That if you actually isolate, you know...
Who were the real takers?
Right, exactly. And if you live in a red state, you, on average, you take more than you give to the U.S. government. You get more in taxes.
White people.
Absolutely. So he goes, Hukin, who said he assumes he's on a government watch list because, quote, he's a white Christian gun owner that believes in liberty. Mm-hmm. That's the WCG TBIL list that they have.
Yeah, and it's actually a voluntary site where you go sign up to be on it.
Yeah, right. Are you a white Christian gun owner that believes in liberty? Well, we have a dating site for you. I was tired of...
Sponsored by Newsmax.
You're right. I was tired of meeting people who were different. I ended up dating my sister, but at least she believes what I say. So he says he doesn't regard people who move from outside the city into low-income housing as even being part of Ferguson. That over there isn't even our city. Remember the whole Real America argument with the Sarah Palin situation. This guy is right in her fan club. People in Ferguson don't even know they're here. Listen to those people talk. They're haters, he said.
They don't even know they're here? What does that mean?
I'm going to go with they ignore the bad part of town. It sounds like a familiar circumstance as well. So anyways, amazing. So that guy, did you see Don Lemon get shoved by the police officer? Did you get a chance to see that little piece?
No, I missed that one.
So Don Lemon's covering for CNN. He's got this, he's holding a microphone that says CNN on it. His camera people are, I will just say, not as pigmentally challenged as he is in the circumstance as far as the cops that are nearby are concerned.
Are you trying to tell me that the reporter was black and the cameramen were white?
Yep. So, and interestingly enough, the police line starts moving. Everybody's got to get back. Y'all have to get out of here. Get out of here, whatever. They walk right past the camera crew. They don't move them, but they push Don Lemon back when he's holding a microphone. He's attached. Like, he's got a cable going from his microphone to the camera.
Likely story, Rabbit.
Right. And, yeah. And he's talking into this mic that clearly says CNN on it. And they're arming him back like, oh, I don't know, I'm just pushing brown people. This is what... And, okay. So the cop that does that, as apparently he's been suspended because after that happened, somebody took another look at him. And he apparently was at I guess, at an Oath Keepers gathering. You know,
those Oath Keepers.
Oh, they're fun. They're really fun.
That is high comedy hypocrisy there.
Oh, this guy is the poster child for that thing. And by the way, a former drill sergeant, according to himself, I guess. I don't know what. I can't verify his military.
I'm putting that on mine too.
But, huh?
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that on mine too.
Right. Okay. So here's
my cats. I rule with an iron hand.
So I mean, his quotes are pretty spectacular as well. He says at one point, I flew to Africa right there, and I went to our undocumented president's home. He was born in Kenya. He said, this is my favorite quote from him.
Wait. This is the cop who got suspended for pushing the reporter?
Yeah.
This is what they found when they dug just a little?
They didn't dig at all. It's been online for ages. This is one of those Oath Keeper things that happened when Obama got elected in the first place. So it's been sitting online for a while. And believe me, it's no surprise to anybody on that police force that he was there and said this. Like, he probably passed out a leaflet to watch it. This is my favorite quote from him, I think, and it's hard to pick because there's a lot. It's an hour-long speech that he gives. He goes, I personally believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. Wait for it. Comma. But I'm also a killer, Page says in the video. I've killed a lot, and if I need to, I'll kill a whole bunch more. If you don't want to get killed, don't show up in front of me. I have no problems with it. God did not raise me to be a coward. Dennis, there's a song from, I think it's from Tomahawk called God Hates a Coward. So just throwing that out there.
He's nodding happily.
Yes. He refers to gay people as sodomites. He refers to the Supreme Court as sodomites and females. Apparently there are no non-sodomites on the Supreme Court, apparently.
I can think of one.
Yeah, he said if you're involved in a domestic violence incident, like if you're a woman being beaten, don't waste a cop's time. Just shoot each other and get it done. Yeah. Okay. And I mean, at one point,
I like the shoot each other part.
Yeah, right. Well, a lot of times, if they do, I made that case last week that there used to be a point where cops would kind of like sit around and brag about the wounds they had gotten from especially domestic violence. It's like, this woman stabbed me in the shoulder, and I was trying to hold her husband back because he'd been punching her. Like those kind of stories. And now it's like we walked in, we tasered everybody and the baby, and we all got out of there by lunch. Like there's an element of that. And I think here's the solution. When I come back, I'm going to have what I think is the solution for the worst problem as far as the police are concerned in Ferguson. I think I have a solution. And I think it would help all across the country. Well done, Dennis. God Hates a Coward by Tom Hawk. When we come back, I'm going to tell you what I think it is. Because I think, Johnny, you, of all people, will agree with me that this will solve it.
You of all people.
You of all people. We'll be back. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Back it up.
That was the live version, man. That one's way better.
Yeah, right, on that Italian television show or whatever it was.
Yeah, and he's got the mask on.
It's beautiful.
Love that song.
Yeah. I think we actually played Make a Meal of Your Asshole on the air, though. I think that line actually, which he says.
I can hardly understand.
Yeah. People.
It was all muffled.
Yeah, right. You didn't know. You have to really pay attention. That's wow.
It's funny that FCC comes. Well, it said make a meal of your asshole.
Yeah, which part of that
John
is
says it's a
wrong,
delicacy.
sir? Break it down for me and explain to me what you interpret as what that means.
Now back to the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back to the show. So, you look at the militarization of the police, and I'm glad that a conversation has actually started about this, because dumping, leftover military ordnance to police under the name of we might need it to fight terror is absurd. Unless you believe to some degree that terrorism, when it comes, will come in the form of thousands upon thousands of invasion force human beings. Because the reality is, if you have even if you have a major bomb,
terrorism is just going to be a great big mob marching at you.
right? Yeah, that
terrorism.
none of this makes sense unless you believe that at some point the police are going to be outnumbered by terrorists. I mean, and that for real. And that's where, by the way, all these right-wingers, start to look at this, and that's the conclusion that they've come to. But they come to the conclusion that this is how the military is going to march in and wipe them out. That this is about fighting off, human militias and whatnot. So in looking at this, I will make a complete confession. I play Call of Duty. It's like the one pleasure that
Kevin Spacey.
Yes, I was about to
House
say
of
it's the one character trait that Kevin Spacey's character on House of Cards and I share, is that we both play Call of Duty.
I think it's called a duty head. We're playing a lot of Call of Duty.
Yeah, I've been called that before, so it's nice to know that it has a reasoning behind it. And in that you can have costumes, increasingly tough looking to the point where, one of the costumes that you can wear has this pull down mask that's got a skull on it, and it's got spikes across the top like a mohawk, and you can wear
Sounds like a hockey goalie.
Yeah, right, exactly, like a ghillie suit where you're covered in thatch and you look like a moving hut, and the idea is that you can look right now you can download, which is kind of the funniest part, you can download any of the suits used in the entire game to play in, including a full astronaut outfit, which I think is great. I think if you're running around playing Call of Duty and you can be in a chicken outfit, that's way more fun.
You are speaking directly to me, my man.
Exactly. So, because I enjoy that part of it. And you can tell the people online who are playing who don't, who are hyper serious about it, clearly have masculinity issues.
Chicken outfit, dude, come on.
Well, they'll just be yelling, racist, sexist, and homophobic stuff, in a display of, high school level toughness. But the point is that the more macho the suit you can download, the more often you will see those in play. If they make a whatever the next kick-ass looking outfit is, that'll be the one that you'll be running around playing the game, and that's what everybody's dressed in. It's like a weird fashion thing. And it's because there's a level of machismo in the people playing it, especially the hardcores who are on all the time, that makes up for something that's missing in their life or something along those lines. But they want to look tough and badass.
So what attracts you to it? Completely non-snarkly. What is it? Just like the action?
Just the gameplay of it. It's like playing paintball. You know what I mean? Like I can't.
Right.
Paintball's too much of a mess. So it's like playing paintball from home.
I've seen some pretty amazing paintball injuries too, by the way.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I've had some pretty amazing paintball injuries myself.
Yeah, a friend of mine got shot. The only part that wasn't covered is his neck. He got shot right in the throat.
They look like these big hickeys. I've had them. They're horrible. So point I'm trying to make is that and especially when you go play paintball, for example, you'll go there with a bunch of your friends and kind of I'll wear dark jeans and a baggy black shirt and kind of wear some clothes that I don't mind having to do laundry. That's the vast majority of people playing paintball. And then there are people who show up in paintball outfits that they bought from military supply stores, and they're all hardcore and they ruin it for everybody, and they spend all day operating a team. We laid waste to everybody there. We're there to play with our kids.
And they do those
stuff.
weird hand signals.
Totally. Right, like they learned in Predator. Right.
Right, yeah. Which I just watched Predator 2 the other day. Danny Glover.
Yeah, it pulls it off. So here's the point I'm trying to make is that the more macho the outfit when you're playing Call of Duty, the bigger the the guy will probably be. If there's a jerk running around being, and there's rare exception.
There's the same in a bar situation, right?
Totally. So when you start
Subway.
giving police officers really hardcore military-looking outfits,
They better play the part.
yeah, it's hard not to play the part. It changes how you act and walk. It makes a very distinct difference. And the behavior patterns between, you know, what's expected of and what's carried out by SWAT versus beat cops is a big, you know, is fairly obvious. And the assumption that, well, that outfit means that job, means that toughness, means that guy, is a constant refrain. And what the issue that
I feel different when I put on a pair of heavy boots.
Right, exactly. That's
like I'm not even being facetious. Like I feel like, you know, like, all right,
right.
Nothing I can't walk on right now.
Right, exactly. So here's my solution to what's going on in Ferguson and really the problem that is not just 100% racial, by the way. There's this whole thing about cops tasering 98-year-old women with butter knives has got to stop. Like, at a certain point,
you can taser people with a butter knife.
I respect, you know, police officers, and I know they want to go home safe at night, but that's not the reason to, you know, meet every threat with deadly force.
Right.
Because attrition is the goal. Overwhelming force should not be the goal in protecting and serving. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes you have to protect people from themselves. Sometimes you have to keep yourself from being used as a tool for suicide by cop, which happens as well.
Which we saw earlier.
Huh? Yeah.
Which it happened like, what, a week, 2 weeks ago?
Exactly.
Kill me, shoot me, shoot me.
Exactly. And I think when you dress up like you're fighting a war, you act like you're fighting a war. And so here's my solution. You ready for it?
Proposing singlets, wrestling singlets.
This is my solution. I think I figured it out. Using as a marker Canadian Mounties and the English Bobby. The solution is big dumb hats.
Oh.
Yeah, I think
they have to wear.
Yes, it's a required piece of gear.
Like they got to put it on when they get out of the car, kind of thing.
Yep, big dumb hats.
Now, are you talking like court jester hats?
No. They,
like,
I mean, they can.
Like
I like
foam cowboy hats.
No. I think the Bobby hats are sufficiently penile, and I think the Mountie hats have that huge brim on them that you could use as a lazy Susan if you wanted to. Put beverages on it, rotate the whole thing around. It's an amazingly large hat or whatever. I think Buford T. Justice.
Penile.
Well, it is,
I don't know what to say about that.
Right. Buford T. Justice, I think, the Jackie Gleason's character in The Smokey and the Bandit, he had that old-fashioned highway patrol
It's awesome.
big brim hat, with the gold tassels that have some sort of Freemason history to them, right?
Yeah. Can they mandate those little mustaches he had, too?
No. Facial hair would have to be the choice of the person, the individual involved. But I think there's, and I'm being a bit silly about this, but I do think there's a difference between fighting a war and intervening in difficult circumstances on behalf of the public, in and amongst the public, which is the important part of the difference in policing. No matter what's going down, is that you're in a situation where even if the bank robbers have machine guns, I get it, and they're trying to kill you. And you should return fire with every skill you could possibly have. However, unlike people in a war zone, you are carrying out this activity amongst the public. Not everybody's a target. Not everybody, which is one of the reasons why, to discourage, open carry and concealed carry is that, they talk about how, in places like Aurora that a guy with a gun could have stopped him sooner or whatever. Yeah. He also could have shot the wrong person. And that's why we do start relegating at a higher level of society. We start relegating this behavior to, to trained groups of human beings. But those trained groups of human beings have a very insular life sometimes. And if they deal with nothing but the sort of dregs of society, all the time, after a while, and I have family in law enforcement, it can burn you down. You can start looking for, everybody looks like a target. Who's going to jump? And And I don't blame them for that, which is one of the reasons why over time you have, community outreach days, situations where the police have to show up, in dress uniform and meet the public and interact with them. And those things have to be encouraged more often. And if you're a police officer and you have an issue with any group in the community, you got to go. If you're racist, or you have a problem with Jews, or you have a problem with Christians, or you have a problem with people based on some sort of blanket idea of who they are, they all live in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't care how bad that neighborhood is. I don't care. Not everybody there should have a bullseye on them. Period.
Right.
And if you're a soldier, everybody does. If 90% of people in a building, if you're a soldier, are there to mean you ill, then your action is going to be dictated as such. On a statistical level, we're at war here. Just take the building. Take it down. Yeah. But as a police officer, you have a heightened, a reasonable expectation of a heightened behavior pattern. You must protect that 10% as if they are as innocent as babies in a row in a maternity ward, because that's the job.
Yep.
And by the way, when we come back, the reason I brought this up is because of that, that cop that was suspended. We'll listen to some of his wonderful Sergeant Major Dan Page when we come back.
Okay.
Grandfather died and left to me his property and money. And when the will it was read out, they told me straight and flat, if I would have his money, I must also wear his hat.
There's a set of morals in here that we no longer abide by. So I'm going to read something to you, because I don't know who here has heard this. And I'm going to go through this very briefly, and then I'm going to jump right in the middle of this here, and I'm going to tell you where the danger is coming from. So if you can bear with me while I get my 20-year-old eyes working here, it'd be good. Okay?
Let me try to count this in.
I'm going to read the Declaration of Independence. Has anybody ever heard that? Yep. Several of you have heard it. Well, you're going to hear it again. But you're going to get in a Command Sergeant Major's abbreviated reading. It says, we, ladies and gentlemen, mean us, the American people, not some bumbleheads in Washington, D.C. It's us, not them. You're going to find out why I'm a drill sergeant, too. I actually sing to 400 and 500 people. I know I got some former Marines in here because I spot them. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That does not mean affirmative action. That means we're all equal.
Looks like we got Nashville Carl.
Cool.
Donald in Aurora. A comment on Ferguson.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm going to see if I can grab a piece of this. Yeah. I'm going to play about, 25 seconds. This sounds okay, I think, doesn't it?
And then we work through life to become
Yeah. I worked out most of that weird loop noise last week, I thought, so this is our first test of it.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back. So this guy, Sergeant Major Dan Page, pushes Don Lemon, but not his camera people, which is weird because they're tethered to him. He's like blocking him off and trying to move him, and he's obviously got a CNN mic, and he's just kind of like shoving him back, and it doesn't work. Like Don Lemon just kind of.
How old is the reporter? Like just by sight?
I guess Don Lemon's probably mid-30s, mid to late 30s.
Young enough to be a hoodlum?
I don't think it matters to this guy. Not if you listen to him. I'll give you an example. Let's
right,
grab. This is a little bit. By the way, Sergeant Major Dan Page he was suspended, I think, with pay. He's not been fired. But this is amazing. This is the guy. This is one of the people who polices Ferguson. Here you go.
That means we're all equal. And then we work through life to become unequal.
Okay, wait, sorry. I want to back up even further because he says he's talking about he's reading the Constitution, which is always fun. He's reading it out loud and then kind of interjecting his own thing like a preacher with scripture.
Sure.
It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That does not mean affirmative action. Okay,
so let's just...
That's what it says in the Constitution? How'd they even anticipate that?
Yeah, they didn't even know. And later on, by the way, he promises to go into why the Air Force is not mentioned in the Constitution. They mention the Army and the Navy, but they don't mention an Air Force. I'll get to that later. How about because flight hadn't been invented yet?
Kitty Hawk was what, like 1870?
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started. I mean, that in and of itself, that's just amazing. All right.
That means we're all equal. And then we work through life to become unequal. Some of us get to be lawyers. Sorry about that. Like a car salesman, maybe. I don't know. But we're all equal. God does not respect persons. So we have no business passing hate crime laws.
Okay, there's a jump. So he goes
for me to be there.
He didn't. He just wanted to say that or whatever. Now, keep in mind, this guy is a former member of the military and a current peace officer. Okay, there are laws that on the books that make it so that when you shoot a cop, for example, it goes right to capital crime in a lot of states, and at the very least. There's, minimum sentencing requirements. The assumption is you're going to get the book thrown at you. Yep. And the reason is behind this that anybody who shoots a cop will shoot any cop, for example. So all cops are in danger from this person. And that any unarmed civilian is also in danger because if this person is crazy enough to take a shot at a cop, they're crazy enough to shoot at anyone. So the extrapolated threat from this human being is that it will spread everywhere. That this person is indiscriminate, but for, a group of people. They will open fire on any cop they see. So that's why it's not just that they had a problem with Officer Dan Page and they shot him. It's that they will kill cops. So there's different sentencing guidelines. Hate crimes are the exact same thing. If you kill a person for being black, every black person is in danger when you're around. So your crime reaches a higher level in the same way that a serial killer's would. There's a difference in sentencing between somebody who has a pattern of killing people who look alike than there is in somebody who killed their ex. There just is. Some people will get an extraordinary sentence for that because of how they did it or under the the planning it and those kind of things, which means if you plan to murder someone, you're capable of planning to murder someone, which you might plan to murder someone else. And that's how we determine how long people stay in jail because we can't keep everybody there. But if somebody is willing to kill someone strictly because of how they look or what they perceive as their religious background or their sexual preference, then every person of that color, religious background, or sexual preference is in danger because of that person. That's what a hate crime law is for. And it's the recognition that there's a higher threat based on racism than was taken seriously before. Anyways, so all right, let's we only got about 5 minutes left in this break, and I don't want to like jump anybody on the call. If our callers can hold into the next hour, I'm going to take them at the top of the hour because I want to play a little bit more of this from the Officer Dan Page. This is one of the Ferguson cops.
None. Because we're setting aside a group of people special. We've got a Supreme Court out of control with the laws on sodomy, and that's what they are. The word gay just means happy. It does not mean wrong. Ooh, drill sergeant coming out of me. All created that all are endowed by their creator, that'd be Jesus Christ.
No, it's actually God the Father, technically speaking. If you're, because
he's going to interject, at least get your weird Christian mythology correct.
Exactly.
With certain unalienable rights. What God gives you, ladies and gentlemen, only God can take back.
Aliens cannot take them back.
I'm going to get into the definitions of law in just a second. Where am I at? Inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, that be us, derived from their just powers from the consent of the government. That means us. We give them the consent to rule over us. They don't take it. We need to kick some of them. Yeah. And you might see my killer instinct come out here shortly, so hold me off there. Okay? It tends to come out of me when I get talking about this. Where am I at? Consent of the government. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it.
This is where it gets
good. That means we can get rid of it. And you're not an extremist by doing it. You have the right. You take the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution is a Christian document. And I'm gonna read, where am I at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Somebody done stole the most lethal weapon in the world.
He's holding up a Bible. By the way, if you're listening at home and you don't know what the most lethalist weapon in the world is, apparently it's a New Testament only Bible.
And I'm gonna read something to you. That's the only verse I'm gonna read out here, because I don't know who all's here. Okay? But this here is the foundation for this. You can't separate them. I don't know what them black-robed perverts don't understand down there.
In case you didn't hear, he said black-robed perverts. He's talking about the Supreme Court.
But they need me to talk to them.
By the way, this is a police officer currently on suspension, but was serving, quote-unquote, the Ferguson citizens up until he shoved Don Lemon.
I'll square him away for you. It'll take me about a minute. Yeah.
He basically just said it would take him about a minute to quote-unquote square away the Supreme Court, who he called black-robed perverts, meaning kill them.
I don't doubt him.
It would take about a minute for him to kill them. Yeah. I don't know how. I mean, they're all, maybe Roberts would be a bit spry, but the rest of them are kind of ancient. I don't know that,
And to institute new government lying its foundations on such principles and organizations, powers in such form as to them shall seem likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that government long established should not be changed for light and transient cause.
Right. By the way, that's the part, government should not be changed for light and transient cause. That's the part of the Constitution that warns against this guy. That's the part of the Constitution, actually, that says people like this guy who just get disgruntled because things aren't going their way and want to chuck out the entire Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the organization of government we set forth. There's a part in the Constitution.
White Christians aren't in charge anymore.
Right. That says, sorry, you can't do that. That's not reason enough. And notice how he just kind of breezes by that part.
And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and upsurtions pursuing invariably the same objective, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government.
Yeah, they're referring to the king at that point, by the way.
Who is in this audience?
He may be alone.
This is from the founding of our country. This is our birth certificate.
We're at
And we're letting it slip right through our fingers because a lot of pastors don't have the testosterone to throw it at you in your face.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. This guy is a cop who has served Ferguson. This guy who thinks there shouldn't, that affirmative action is a violation of the Constitution. And then you wonder why the people in Ferguson complain that they're treated like animals all the time. We'll be back right after this. We're going to take your call, 773-763-9278. In the next hour, we're going to talk a bit about whether we're going to war in Syria or not, as well as taking your calls about the Ferguson situation. We'll be back.
Listening to the House Sparks radio program, Maker Will Drive.
Is that your kiddo?
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
Yeah. He wanted to sit in front of my microphone yesterday, so we had him do that, and I was like, I'll ask him if he'll say it, and he totally did. So it was really...
Email that to me, and I can throw it in my little system here.
Oh, totally. Let's see if I can. And then he goes at the end.
You're listening to the House Sparks radio program, Maker Will Drive.
Maker Worldwide.
You got it, man.
Oh, please send that to me.
Oh, yeah. So cute. Let's see. All right.
We got quite a few calls here.
Oh, good. All right.
You know the drill. Thanks for the call. I drop them.
Yep.
Or if I can feel it when it's over, I'll drop them sometimes too.
Yeah, that's fine too. I trust your judgment in that regard.
Cool.
Turn my fan on temporarily. It's hot in this room.
$15 seconds.
Cool.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Things are going to start happening to me now.
Live exclusively for WCPT AM and FM in Chicago and streaming worldwide at chicagosprogressivetalk.com. Standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
To do the vibes.
Welcome back to the show. Let's take some calls. 773-763-9278 is our number, and we're discussing first and foremost both the situation in Ferguson and my personal belief that we could solve a lot of our problems with weird police activity in certain communities with big dumb hats. That's my solution. Here, let's take some calls. Who do we have first?
We've got Nashville Carl online.
Oh, right on. Hey, Carl, welcome to the show.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. There's something to be said about that because I want you to Google this whenever you get a chance. The Cincinnati Police Department, and they have the most awkward, weirdest white police hats I've ever seen. You think that they're gonna open up a damn door for you with those hats that they wear? It's
Right.
absolutely ridiculous. I mean, their whole uniform is ridiculous, and that you're really speaking on something when it comes to that. You were mentioning earlier about Syria and there's imminent strikes. Newsflash: we have already done that several times.
Right.
They hadn't told us about it. Here's the thing. This is something that I noticed, and God forgive me, I'm about to defend President George W. Bush. Yeah, how about that? I'm nuanced like that. So here's the thing. All the reporters that bitched and complained about George W. Bush taking us into a war, unprovoked, an unnecessary war, taking us into a war basically because they lied to us about weapons of mass destruction. These are the same damn reporters that I've been watching all week long cheerleading again. Because remember, it was all Bush's fault. He did it. The reporters didn't cheerlead him on into Iraq and Afghanistan. They didn't do anything. They just clearly forgot about that when they were throwing Bush up under the bus. They're doing the same thing now. I saw Chris Matthews having a guy on there, and he's agreeing with him about, and I'm not just talking about conservative news outlets.
Right.
I'm talking even liberal outlets cheerleading the thought of going after ISIS in Syria. And the thing about it, what's really crazy, and it pains me to say this, and I am very serious, we have got to have the most ignorant populace in the whole world in this country. Because for us to even consider a group like ISIS, right after they just stopped telling us that they went from Al Qaeda to Al Qaeda like, to Al Qaeda associated, to Al Qaeda affiliated, then Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, now Al Qaeda in Africa, and all of a sudden, that was our mortal enemy for a whole decade, and now all of a sudden, ISIS.
Oh yeah, and by the way, the part of the case is being made right now that we have to go to Congress for any of the actions he's taken, not specifically because we can't fight, quote unquote, the war on terror and whatnot, but that ISIS and ISIL specifically are not Al Qaeda related. As a matter of fact, because they're Sunni, as was Saddam Hussein, they're arguably at war with what they would consider kind of a lesser offshoot of, of Islam through Al Qaeda.
Islam.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's weird. I mean, okay, you're gonna fall for that again, America. You're gonna fall for them. You got guys in Soviet Union, 20th century era tanks that they may have, driving around in Toyota pickups with 50 cows on their back. This is what we're supposed to go to war for. No, you fight these guys. You got to fight a gang in a smart, tactical way. You can't put 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 troops on the ground to fight these type of people. And it seems like we haven't learned our lesson. And it seems like the same media,
Carl,
again, like I said, they complain about George W. Bush. They're cheerleading it on again.
You seem to be laboring under the assumption that when we put soldiers in a war zone, it's to solve the problem every time. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Sometimes it's just to spend ordnance and do a display of power.
Yeah, it's all about money. If it's going to be profitable for someone to go to war, you best believe we're going to blow up something. Something's going to get blown up. If someone is going to make a lot of money in the military-industrial complex, I still think one of the greatest speeches ever given in American history was that speech by Eisenhower when he was leaving office, warning us about what was about to happen.
The military-industrial complex, absolutely.
Right, and we still haven't got it yet. We haven't not got it yet. This man told us, warned us, this is what's about to happen. You need to pay attention. And here we go, 50 years later, we're still dealing with the military-industrial complex, and we haven't figured out that war equals money.
Yep. Well, here's what I also think, too, and what the biggest weapon being used against in the media content of what's being discussed is that support for the troops is used as a weapon to keep you from questioning the policy of actually when troops are used and where. And an important separation needs to be made, linguistically when we're talking about that every single time, because that's been such a successful piece of psyop, essentially, that if you question the policy, you're questioning the soldier. The same thing goes if you have a problem with racist cops or violent cops that exist out there, that somehow you always have to caveat not all cops are like this, when why should the assumption even be that case? Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you gotta get those kind of people out of the police force. They make it worse for all the good cops. That's the assumption. That's the baseline we're always operating on. And the same thing happens, militarily. We're operating on a baseline that somehow, if you question the policy, you're questioning the soldier, and that's got to stop.
Yeah. When I first called in, I first started talking.
Yep.
I was kind of tongue in cheek when I meant by that I'm a nuanced person. I am, and I pride myself on being able to purge one thing from another, hold a thought in my mind with two opposing points and not going insane.
Right.
That right there is something that we, as America, we have a big problem with.
Right.
We can't. We say, well, we got to militarize the police, but then we can't be soft on crime. You could be both. You could demilitarize the police and also be hard on criminals. There's nothing wrong with that, but for some reason we're either too dumb or too slow or too ignorant in this country to realize that you can be for the truth but be against the policy. So
it's just I appreciate the call, Carl. I think the issue, in a lot of ways, is the fact that we in sort of the media war about this, if you're trying to sell a war and you've got, you know, kind of nefarious corporate or personal reasons for carrying it out, you're going to start your argument further down the road than the people who are going to be against it, because they're being caught unawares by the behavior. I think to some degree, the reason the you know, Congress and even the president are much more, you know, more so the Congress, because I don't think this president, you know, leans in the direction of military powers as a solution, which is why he gets called weak and, you know, feckless and what have you, dithering all the time, because they believe in the knee-jerk violent reaction, and he's just not bringing it the way they want. The McCains of the world think that he's indecisive because he's actually weighing more than what's the decision you need to make. You either do nothing or you kill everyone, and doing nothing is not an option. That's pretty much the McCains of the world. That's what Lindsey Graham thinks a solution is, that there can be no other version of this where it works, you know. And when you have people operating like that, and they're in many ways the instigators of how and when we go to war, they've been prepping for this whole thing for a while. They're working on the sales pitch to the American people for this policy for a while before it actually starts to reach ahead. And by the time you're starting your anti-war march, you're already ice skating uphill, you know, against this comment. Hey, we got to support the troops. The troops are doing a great job, and you know, we're of course
until they come back.
Yeah, totally. That's, I mean, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll take more calls. 773-763-9278. It's the Hal Sparks Radio Program, Mega Worldwide.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks Radio Program, Maker Worldwide. You got
It's all the same to me.
to the You're listening to the Hal Sparks Radio Program, Maker Worldwide. You got it, man.
I have to cut that down. I don't know why when it mixed, it gave all 9 minutes of the other stuff that I recorded. He made a couple more, too. He even did a call-in. Amazing.
He's got to be pleased with that. The crowd is just on its feet here. He's a Cinderella boy.
Oh, yeah, yo, gag.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Wait, that's Yayo Gak. That's Steve Vai's song where he's playing whatever his kid says, which is amazing.
Wonder why requests that are.
Oh, so genius. By the way, this is the perfect thing to play under this.
You're listening to the House Sparks radio program. Maker will drive. You got it, man.
That's my son Camden doing his first liner for the show.
Maker Worldwide.
Yeah, Maker Worldwide. That was a tough one.
He's keeping the acronym.
Oh yeah, totally. He's working the whole thing, so amazing. Beautiful. Who else do we have on the line? Let's take some calls.
We have Donald from Aurora.
Cool. Hey Donald, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing, Hal?
Good.
The last gentleman that spoke out, that was speaking up, I agree with him 100%. He practically took the words right out of my mouth.
Carl will do that to you.
The thing is I was watching Chris Matthews, too, and I was practically jumping out of my chair. If I would have been able to reach out into that studio, I'd have strangled him. He's interviewing this Evan Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, geez. Evan Coleman, who was really sarcastically saying, well, ISIS is already here, and it's proof they have their power cells and blah, 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 and they're ready to attack us, and our president knows about this and all this crap. They're trying to wordsmith us into the war again. Right. And he's right. They're using the media to spread their lies and to spread their fabricated information that they use to push us into a war. It's the same scenario, and he's right. There's a lot of stupid Americans that'll go for this. Now, I'm a veteran, and I was drafted in 1966. It's funny how they get a hold of these colonels, like this one lifer, and I call him a lifer because that's the way we felt about a lot of them. Colonel Jack Jacobson. I don't care if he is a Medal of Honor winner. What do you think he's going to say? He's going to be in favor of a war. I mean, this is what's really crazy. I remember when everybody was getting out, and I got out in '68, I remember watching John Kerry standing up to a congressional committee and telling them that the war was wrong in Vietnam. And not only that, I remember Robert McNamara screaming and crying on national news saying that the war was wrong, and 58,000 of our soldiers are dead, and all that's left of them is their names, and now all of a sudden you're saying it's wrong? Really? Lose a war and gain a conscience. That's what it's all about here. No, we got to smarten up with this time. This president is the best president we had. He uses his sense. We would have been supporting a group that is really ISA today, and they were all going against him. And here we go again, and they're gonna start going against him again. There's one other thing I want to say too about this whole thing. If we do have to go in, we got to get the support of all these other countries, these Arab nations. One thing that one of the, I don't know if it was the colonel, I think what the colonel said. He said one thing about Bush first. He says he got all the Arab nations together to go along with the invasion of Iraq. Really, I know he did. Yeah, but you know something? He wasn't working against. He didn't have a Congress that was constantly going against him and everything. This president has so much going against him. It's hard for him to do anything because they don't want to have him do anything that'll make him look good. And we're caught through a real dilemma. And as far as I'm concerned, now one thing I disagreed about your caller, Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld, those three should be in jail. They put us into wars under a bunch of lies, and they opened up a Pandora's box. And this is the problem that we got. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call. Yeah, there's a lot in there to discuss, not the least of which is that when we're in this situation where essentially every circumstance we're finding ourselves dealing with in the Middle East is, could be traced to blowback from a recent or not so recent conflict. I mean, almost everything that we're dealing with has to do with the insistence that military power is the way to solve the problem that we, a predecessor parent may have been, gotten us into, and that the only solution out of it is more military action and more military action. And as we keep doing that, we create more victims who blame the United States for the death of their relatives, on and on and on. So at some point, that has to stop. And in the same way that, we talked about the Israeli conflict in Gaza, there's a huge issue with, at some point, if anybody can destroy your truce or your peace by chucking a rock or firing a rocket, and you can just say, well, that was that's representative of all the people here, so they deserve just to be carpet bombed, then you're now on the wrong side of the circumstance, and you're just as blatant and sort of open a killer as anybody. At a certain point, if you're going to claim that you are the bigger society, you have to act it. And arguably what this cop is, a lot of the Ferguson issue comes from in this particular Dan Page dude and his ilk. And the idea that you would somehow be the bigger person in a circumstance is an absurdity to him. That this is really just, like stomping crickets as far as he's concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And that and then but at the same time he wants to argue that he represents the superior society. This whole they're animals, I'm sorry, but how long do you cage a human being or shock or shoot them before they react to protect themselves like an animal would? We all would. We all would. So, that in and of itself is a big one. Let's take another call if we got one.
Sure, we've got George on line 5.
Cool. Hey, George, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thank you.
Sure.
This Page character,
yeah.
I don't want to denigrate Mayberry by calling him Small Town, but he's like Barney Fife on steroids with none of the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me wonder, if he's such a badass sergeant major, why didn't he choose one of the two big city police forces in Missouri to serve in, like St. Louis or Kansas City, or apply to the state patrol?
Right.
I mean, what do we got here? A 20,000 population town with a totally incompetent police force, and he's a sergeant major.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the Army, I think you've got to have like at least a battalion worth of troops before you get a sergeant major in the unit. This police force can't be more than 100 people. And this is the kind of rank inflation that small-minded, small-town outfits just thrive on. I mean...
Well, do you think he may have...
Even a drill sergeant.
Right.
Please. The other thing is, despite its inherent nobility, as we all know, apparently he doesn't, the Declaration of Independence has no force in law.
Mm-hmm.
It's laudable as a statement of principles and as a list of reasons why we rebelled against England. But from the time it was proclaimed until the time the Constitution went into effect was 11 years. In the meantime, we had the Revolution, we were governed by the Continental Congress and the colonial governments, and the Articles of Confederation. So the right of the people to alter and abolish their form of government is codified in the Constitution. We have our right of free speech, petition the government, the press, voting in elections. That's how we alter or abolish our form of government. It makes no provision for violence. And any suggestion to the contrary is treason. Somebody who's taken at least a couple of votes to support and defend the Constitution of the nation and the state of Missouri ought to have a little better understanding what treason is all about.
Oh, believe me, if you listen to this whole speech from this guy, if you listen to his whole rant, and it is exactly that, it goes on for an hour. His next point, and I mean, it's too long and extrapolated to even get into on the radio. It would take up the entire show. Is making the case that Missouri is a sovereign country because it has a constitution, even though it's a state constitution. He can't seem to make the distinction. But this is also a guy who couldn't figure out why the Air Force wasn't in the Constitution itself. And that because it has a flag and that it can try people for treason, it can be recognized as a country, and therefore it should secede as one. This guy is selling that point. He doesn't just kind of believe it in a soft sense, like, hey, well, this is illegal wrangling. He believes that this is the way to go. Like, his grasp on just the legal aspect of these things goes insane. I mean, it goes into the deep reads quickly.
Yeah, and the insanity is manifested in the fact that he doesn't understand where our security lies.
Right.
Our security lies in unity. We all know the old story about the old man who had 10 quarreling sons, and he called them to his presence, and he took 10 sticks and he broke them in half one at a time. And then he bound 10 sticks together, and he couldn't break them. And he looked at them, okay, schmucks, do you get it? 50 states make a strong nation.
Right.
If the South had prevailed in the Civil War, how long before they would have become the prey of England or France or Mexico or Brazil?
Oh, totally.
They wouldn't have been able to stand on their own. So Missouri can't possibly be an independent country.
Yeah, it's absurd. I mean, the idea that, the concept is pushed entirely as a right-wing fantasy to avoid the other. I mean, this is really this idea that they somehow automatically shot to the top because they were born white without having anything to really show for it over anybody else. They haven't earned some sort of magical place, and there's nothing magical about their race, and that upsets them. And so in this case, like, he even goes into one point, which is amazing. We have to take a break, and I appreciate the call. He goes into this one point where he says he's got 2 birth certificates. He got one when he was younger, when he went into the military, and it said Caucasian on it. And he got a new one that says white. And he's like, what's changed? Why is that on there? That's, to create violence against white people, basically, to create this, this psychological dehumanizing. He says it's to dehumanize people. If you're seen as white instead of Caucasian, somehow that makes you an easier target for military violence. It's the goofiest thing ever. It never crossed his mind that Caucasian actually covers people that aren't at first blush visibly white. For example, East Indian people who qualify as Caucasian because of where people came across the Caucasus Mountains and how they ended up where they are, and the racial background, which those lovely people in Texas who were wanted a Caucasian only like whatever it was, like they were giving scholarships to college, but you had to be a Caucasian. And then all these East Indians started filing for it just to mess with them. And they had to shut it down because all the people who qualified weren't white. That's why your birth certificate name changed on there, because it's a better description of who you are visibly. That's it. It's not because the NSA is somehow parsoning you out and going to put you in some sort of, thinking camp, for indoctrination. Oh, my God. And we'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Well, we're waiting.
4 more callers on the line.
There you go. We'll have to pound through them to get there before the happy ending.
Uh-huh. And boy, I'll be waiting with the trigger when Steve from Gold Coast gets on.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back to the show. Let's take your call, 773-763-9278. Who do we got, Johnny?
We've got John from Kentucky.
Cool. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Hal. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I told your call screener, about 45 minutes ago when I first called in that I'm former law enforcement in central Kentucky outside of Lexington. And the hat you're referring to, the big dumb hat, is actually called the Stratton Campaign hat. The state police here have to wear it.
Right.
And deputy sheriffs and most municipal cops have to wear it. We're issued 2. One is for straw for summer. Another one is felt for winter because it's warmer. And I want to insert my 2 cents here about this Dan or Don Page character. It's people like him that get the privilege to be a sworn peace officer that mess it up for those of us that are actually compassionate and want to help people.
Absolutely.
He is extremely dangerous. And, I mean, just listening to him last night on CNN, I was looking for his pointed hat and his long white robe. Because to me, that's what he should be wearing instead of a badge and a gun.
I completely
agree. I don't know about the cops in Missouri, but when I took an oath as a peace officer of Commonwealth of Kentucky, I was told that I was not to discriminate, that I was to give my life, if need be, for anyone that needed, protecting or serving. There was there was no bias, whatsoever.
And that's what maintains the honor of the office. And anybody who messes with that, and it undermines the value of what everybody else who wore the badge has given their life for, if they've or been wounded for in the line of duty, or has served for their entire life. And it seems to be missing on people like him because it seems to be just kind of this blatant power trip and a way to establish some sort of abstract control. But thanks for, by the way, the school lesson on the hat. And I, when I jokingly refer to it as a big dumb hat, but the reality is that there's an element of when you separate your military from your civilian policing, that's the mark of a higher society. It's something we should be proud of as a country. And one of the ways we do that is by making sure our police don't look like soldiers when they approach, when they deal with you as a human being. And there's a value to that. And that's one of the ways to do it. That's one of the ways to do it, is that distinct difference in the uniform. I appreciate the call. I really do. Who else we got? Johnny?
We got Steve from the Gold Coast, line 6.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I wanted to add that I think you have characters such as this who want to use wedge issues, and you talk about things like affirmative action and so forth. Where I think that there are reasonable people out there who can reasonably disagree on this question, because in terms of degrees of consideration that we grant one group versus another, there is a point where someone can argue to me that this is over the top and that you are basically saying that, well, if you were born of a mother and father with postgraduate degrees and you're African American, live on the Upper East Side of New York, that you're granted a degree of consideration that a white child from Appalachia who doesn't have a single relative that's ever seen the inside of a university isn't granted. And at that point, I think you can make the argument against affirmative action. But
the chances, I'll tell you what, the chances of those two people being pulled over for the same crime are
and that's my point, is that we're using that argument, which again I think that reasonable people can reasonably disagree upon, to justify all of this other action. So the idea that, well, you've got a disproportional amount of crime that takes place within the African American community, but then, the argument stops there. No one wants to begin to address why is it the case. When we talk about poverty, disinvestment in communities, disinvestment in human beings, all of these things which create conditions in which desperate people sometimes do desperate things. And rather than talking about how we can elevate that community, we simply want to start with, well, it doesn't matter whether you're Bill Gates' son or daughter or whether you were born in a housing project on the south side of Chicago, you're pretty much obligated to behave the same way. Well, no, that's not the case. If I was born to the son of a billionaire, I don't have to wonder where my next meal is coming from or whether I'm going to have shoes to start the new school year. There are things in our lives that define us, and when you're surrounded, especially as a young adult, by an environment in which things like antisocial behavior, which again is the product of a society that is not invested in these communities, you are in some cases likely to engage in that antisocial behavior.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we then justify acting in this manner such that we're going to use lethal force against another human being. And with all due respect to those persons who serve in law enforcement, I have the utmost respect for them. If you can't handle the fact that there's going to be a degree of danger in your job that does not legitimize your pulling out a gun and shooting someone. In other words, any sort of threat to you is not something that legitimizes your killing another human being. That you have to be able to accept a degree of threat and respond in an alternative fashion. And if you can't do that psychologically and emotionally, quite frankly, you're in the wrong job.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. I appreciate it. There's an element to which that's what makes the job extraordinary and why we appreciate officers for what they do. And if that's not going to be a part of how you do your job, then you have no business messing it up for everyone else. Who else do we got? I want to get at least one more
Dave
call.
from Hoffman Estates.
Cool. Hey, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Talking about Syria, Syria has a host of military players all in close proximity to each other, including Islamic State, Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front, mainstream Western-backed rebels, and pro-government forces. So that, like I was reading about that, the Islamic State is among the groups fighting Assad, meaning if the U.S. campaign to weaken the extremists could actually strengthen the leader that the White House has sought to push from office.
Mm-hmm.
And Obama could try to counter that act, that uncomfortable dynamic, but also taking strikes against Assad, then that could put the U.S. on the hook for a kind of a long-term commitment to rebuilding Syria. Something
Right.
that he's tried to avoid.
Yep.
But however, the military.
I think the issue. You bring up a really good point, and I think the essence being that if you try to quick fix this, it's a mess. If you do a long-term fix, it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't involve us, all in that circumstance. But there's a modicum of danger to it in that you have to watch something like ISIS or ISIL start spreading, and your first reaction may be to we've got to violently attack this to protect people and ourselves and the like. But what ends up happening is if you overreact and you fight too quickly, you don't know where they're going or how to maintain a control of the circumstance. You just kind of create chaos, and out of that chaos creates more danger and more enemies. And that's what we've done. Every single time something like this pops up, another group, an Al-Qaeda-like group pops up, our first impulse has always been, jump on it with both feet. And when we do that, we get surprised that the splash hits everybody else. It's just odd that way.
The president's own military leadership made it clear in recent days that the threat from the Islamic State cannot be fully eliminated without going after that group in Syria as well as Iraq.
Right.
And then he's also in a rough situation that politically it could bolster our argument from the critics that he's overseen an American retreat on the world stage if he doesn't go after these militants and stuff like that.
Well, and also, what does going after them mean? Does it mean a direct military strike? Does it mean boots on the ground? Maybe going after it means an international Interpol-like activity mixed with a coalition of outside bombing, but no guns handed out.
Yeah, I know the president has kind of wanted this Assad for a long time. Like right after Gaddafi was overthrown in Libya, he came out and told Assad to step down, and he didn't. And then about a year ago, we had the chemical weapons deal and all of that stuff that was going to be the reason to go after him. So he's been wanting to get this Assad, but now this ISIL, that's another. I mean, that's a.
But again, I totally agree with you. But I like this kind of stuff. If you look at it from a historical standpoint, comes up all the time, and our response seems to be that rigid military response. I appreciate the call. We're right up against the break. If you're not launching an attack because there are planes flying towards you, or there's not, there in the case of ISIS or ISIL, where they're marching towards a site and you've got to make a decision, which the president did to, if they're not doing that, then you have a responsibility to think these things through rather than, do the John McCain and jump in flailing about hoping you hit some bad guys. It's this weird assumption that anytime you're using violence, it's the right thing to do. And it ties into this sort of mentality that goes into, well, we're having riots, related to these protests. Most of the people here are peacefully protesting, but there's like 8 people throwing stuff. Our response to all the protesters should be a wall of military-like force. And you're shocked that somehow burns bridges that were tenuous between the local citizenry and the police force. You're surprised when we create more enemies than we create friends in the Middle East in those circumstances. Sometimes toughness means you don't just act on your guttural desire to punch somebody, or physically act out, that you use restraint and figure out a better way to do it. We'll be back right after this.
It looks like we got one more caller. You want to take that caller, then do the happy ending?
Yeah, sounds good.
Deal.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back to the show. We got one more caller, and then we're going to do the happy ending. Who do we have, Johnny?
We have Ivan.
Oh, cool. Hi, Ivan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Hal. Give me a couple minutes here. Americans, like that Missouri cop, live in a culture of fear perpetrated by neocon warmongers, corporate fool teabaggers, and the NRA.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Leaving Americans to be afraid of their own shadows. As a result, we got guns everywhere. Allowing crazy people to go into schools and gun down kindergarten babies. This proliferation of guns calls our police to have a shoot first and ask questions later mentality, and allows the cops that are racist to shoot blacks at will. You know, the rest of America, fueled by the media, are afraid that a group of fundamentalist Muslims, armed by the likes of lame-brained John McCain and Americans' arms dealers, are coming to America and chop off our fundamentalist Judo-Christian heads. You know, the racket of war goes on in the Middle East, and now it's spilled right into American streets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fascinating part for me in looking at that xenophobic fear that they really can latch onto, that the different is going to get you, is, you know, it's, I mean, your reticulator activating system in your head is going to automatically pick out anything that's outside the norm and go, is that a threat? That's what your lizard brain does.
I can tell who's different just by looking at them.
Right, exactly. The issue, though, becomes at a certain point, you become incapable of making any friends who would help you solve that problem. That there are, I got news for you, the vast majority of Muslims are like the vast majority of Christians. They kind of go to church because it's a social thing. Mm-hmm. That the vast majority of their society does it, so they do it too. And they take it with about as much.
Always done.
They think about it with as much seriousness as we do the Constitution. If you really get knuckled down, they would defend it in a corner. You know, that's why if you see all these things like the majority of Americans believe the Earth was created in 7 days. Yeah, but only because if you don't say so, then the next question: why do you go to church if you don't really believe the basic tenet of the thing? What the hell do you go to church regularly? Yeah. Well, why don't you believe that? Well, I mean, I do, but I think some of it's metaphorical. Which part's metaphorical then? I mean, why do you even go? Like, at a certain point, to avoid that social, awkwardness, you just go, yes, of course I believe that. It's the basic tenor of what I go to believe. Yeah, that's it. And at a certain point, you got to recognize that the vast majority of, Christians don't want to have anything to do with this Dan Page dude or the Westboro Baptist Church, any more than the vast majority of Muslims want to have anything to do with ISIS or ISIL or Al-Qaeda. It's the same mentality. Brian Fisher agrees with ISIS on most things. He does. And he's jealous that he doesn't get to carry his beliefs out in the same way they do. I mean, this Dan Page dude is talking about shooting Supreme Court justices. He at one point says, I'm a sharpshooter and I can kill somebody at 1,800 yards. If I shoot you, if you try to run, you're gonna die tired. Meaning that you're gonna run yourself tired, and he'll wait till you're as far away as you can get, and then he'll shoot you. And how is that really that different, other than sort of the use of weapon of hacking somebody's head off on a video? If you could follow through. It isn't. So shut up. Joking about that and kind of saying that, dude, if I had a chance, I'd shoot everybody on the Supreme Court or whatever. How does that make you any different or better than? That's the problem with these Muslims. They'll just kill you just to kill you. You couldn't sit and have an argument about what you disagree with or agree with that the Supreme Court is doing, except in the most abstract ways, and then you'd bend back on half of what you said, and you'd never believe for a second all the things that led you up to shooting a Supreme Court justice like you fantasize about doing, in the same way that I guarantee the guy who hacked off the head of James Foley can claim no purity as a Muslim. It's absurd. You're using whatever religious belief that gives you the most strength in the region you exist in to be your macho, lame self. That's it. All right, let's do a happy ending. We need one.
I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me first.
Okay, so there's a couple of good ones out there. Not the least of which is the White House. Did you see how it's dealing with the Hobby Lobby circumstance?
Are they going to Michael's?
Yeah, right. No, the Obama administration announced on Friday a new accommodation for religious nonprofits that object to the coverage of the full range of contraceptives in their employee health care plans. This sounds like a bend, right? If you read it right away, you go, oh, man, they're now writing in a new accommodation that will allow religious nonprofits, such as Catholic schools and hospitals, to opt out of covering birth control by notifying the Department of Health and Human Services of their objections. This is the cool part. HHS and the Department of Labor will then arrange for a third-party insurer to pay for and administer the coverage for the nonprofit's employees so that the women still receive the contraceptive coverage guaranteed to them by the Affordable Care Act. Boom! Oops.
Drops Mike.
Yeah, right. See ya. Yeah, no. They'll get it through a government channel, which abides by rule of law, not by some, singular reading of a religious document to, bent towards, whatever belief system you want at that particular point, especially if it's just to pad your bottom line. Basically they're trying to do this because they think this will undermine, the Affordable Care Act and get rid of it, and massive fail, and an instant, pretty easy fix, which I think is awesome. Do you guys have one, by the way? I don't want to step on.
We do.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, mine's real quick. My happy ending comes from a sweet old man named Arthur St. John. Arthur is 94. Recently let go due to cutbacks from his part-time job as a grocery store bagger. He worked there for 22 years, and thanks to a frequent customer, Bonnie Gervais, her and her son started an online campaign, raised money for the sweet old man, $7,166. Got a little nest egg there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's it. That's all I got, man.
That's all you need. And Johnny, you got one?
Yeah, mine it's directly about ISIS. Apparently the Kurds are sending all female soldier infantry to the lines to fight ISIS because if they believe if they get killed by a woman, they do not go to heaven.
That is strategically beautiful to some degree.
Yep. Yeah, and apparently the women are real badasses.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I mean, if you look at the women who fight in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, there's no convincing the rest of the world that women can fight in their military alongside men and be equal. By the way, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if your religion purports that women are anything but equal to men, then it is just derivative, leftover, tribal BS. That you have just tacked on some BS patriarchal governmental stuff into your religious doctrine because it serves your kind of macho need to believe in the superiority of your sex. It has nothing to do with it. There's no way, if you're God, you make two people with the same number of limbs and just say one of them's less than. It doesn't work. You've made it up. If your religion believes that women are less than men, or I guess men are less than women, you made it up. You or somebody just before you, just like you, fictionalized a part of your religion because you're socially an awkward person who can't deal with the opposite sex.
I can hear you, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You guys are awesome. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Carrie. And thank you, callers. We will talk to you next week, and I guarantee we'll have a ton of news to talk about. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks Radio program, Maker Worldwide. You got it, man.
Awesome. All right, thanks, you guys.
Later, dude.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Johnny. Bye. Bye, folks. Got to run. Have a great week. Talk to you later. Bye.